Welcome to the Allen Mentoring Every Question Answered in the SAT College Board Blue Book. So first off, I apologize that I haven't been here in a little while. You're going to have to forgive me. I just moved into a new office. I had to get all my stuff in. Had to kind of get used to working in a new place, and I've been busy in the evenings. So I'm very sorry that I've not been here in a while. If this is your first time here, please check out the Allen Mentoring channel, and there you will see an archive of all the previous sessions. Every test up until practice test 4, which is what we'll be covering today, should be covered in full. So every single math section you will find in the archives. And then as far as updates for me, this will be, I think, the penultimate SAT Every Question Answered stream. So today I will be doing math test section 4 in practice test 4. This is the calculator section, and I will be covering only the questions that you will see that are multiple choice. So I will be doing all the multiple choice questions today. On Thursday, I will be doing the short answer questions, and the big question is, what will I be doing next week? And that is a question I still do not have the answer to. I'm throwing around a few different ideas. Let me put this back. Yes, Bob Gills, I'm finally back. Thank you for staying on top of my status. It actually means a lot. It means that people actually care about these streams, and that motivates me to keep on working at it. So as far as next week, there are a few different ideas I'm throwing around. I've done sessions, lectures on introductory web topics. So for example, how to start a website with HTML and CSS. I've worked with students as young as grades 3, as old as grades 12. So anywhere in the kind of middle school, high school age range is what I'm focused on, and education technology is my passion. So I might kind of start moving the topics more toward the web. I might maybe put out a survey on Thursday also. I'm not really sure exactly how I want to do it, but I kind of want to get your feedback. So everybody who actually watches these videos, I assume, is kind of in the either middle school or high school range, most likely the latter. So if you guys are interested in any sort of web topics, it could be web design, it could be app design, iOS, Android. I might be doing some simple tutorials on, or live streams on, how to create a simple iOS app, web app, Android app, something like that. If you also perhaps want to participate in letting me know about ACT or some other big test that you've been studying, let me know as well, and I'll consider that. But stay tuned for Thursday, where I will probably announce the new topic coming up. So yeah, whatever you guys want to do, whatever you want me to cover, just let me know, and I will definitely consider that. But I guess we can get started with section 4, the calculator section. So let's see here. Number 1. The monthly membership fee for an online television and movie service is $9.80. The cost of viewing television shows online is included, but there's an additional fee of $1.50 to rent each movie online. For 1 month, Jill's membership and movie rental fees were $12.80. How many movies did Jill rent online that month? Well, we know that it only costs $1.50 to rent a movie. So if the base cost is $9.80, and she paid a total of $12.80, that means that there was $3 that were spent on movies. Yes, because this combined will make $12.80. And so if it was $3 total spent on movies and each one is $1.50, we know that she must have gotten 2 movies to get to that $3 mark. All right. Just getting back into it. I haven't been here for a few weeks, so got to get my drawing hand warmed up. My mouth moving. I haven't been talking as much, so bear with me here. We're gonna get stronger, better, faster. Number 2. One of the requirements for becoming a court reporter is the ability to type 225 words per minute. That is really fast. Donald can currently type 180 words per minute. That's very impressive. And believes that with practice, he can increase his typing speed by 5 words per minute each month. Which of the following represents the number of words per minute that Donald believes he will be able to type M months from now? So at his base, he types 180, and then every month he gains 5 words per minute. So we see here that C shows that he had a base of 180 plus 5 additional words times every additional month. So C is the correct answer. The other ones don't exactly make sense. In this case, he's decreasing words per minute. Here, he's gaining 180 words per minute. That's not true. That's not true. And 225 is irrelevant in this case. All right. Number 3. If a 3-pound pizza is sliced in half and each half is sliced into thirds, what is the weight in ounces of each of the slices? Okay, so you have a whole pizza. It's sliced into halves. Each half is sliced into thirds. So if I do that symmetrically on both sides, and that is far from symmetrical, don't worry about it. What is the weight in ounces of each of the slices? So one of the slices, as I can see here, 1/6 of the entire pizza. If the entire pizza weighs 3 pounds, how can I find a sixth of that? I'd multiply 1/6 times 3, okay, because it's 3 pounds. So how do you do 1/6 times 3? Well, you could change 3 into a fraction, 3 over 1. And now I will see here that 1/6 times 3 over 1 is equal to 3 over 6. And 3 over 6 is 1/2. Okay, so the entire thing will be 1/2 of a pound. And if 1 pound is 16 ounces, then 1/2 of a pound will be 1/2 of 16, which is 8. So far, so good. Getting back into it. Okay. Nick surveyed a random sample of the freshman class of his high school to determine whether the fall festival should be held in October or November. Of the 90 students surveyed, 25.6% preferred October. Based on this information, about how many students in the entire 225-person class would be expected to prefer having the fall festival in October? Well, if he surveyed 90 students, that's a decent amount. So we can assume that if of those 90 students, this percentage preferred October, then that same percentage should be reflected in the entire class. Okay, that's why he surveyed 90 people, right? Because he wants to extrapolate this percentage not just to these 90 people, but to the entire class. So how can we find out what is 25.6% of the entire class? So how can we convert, or how can we do 25.6% of 225? Well, how do you convert percentages into decimals? Because that is usually our first step. Well, what you want to do is you want to move the decimal place to the left 2 times. Bam, bam. So our new decimal place is right here. So we can rewrite this as 0.256. So 0.256 of 225. What does of translate to? We've done this a few times. Of in percent problems translates to multiplication. So 0.256 times 225. So if we get our handy dandy calculator, we could see that 0.256 times, I did plus, wait, times 225 will be 57.6. And 57.6 is closest to 60. B. Very nice. Number 5. The density of an object is equal to the mass of the object divided by the volume of the object. So density is equal to the mass divided by the volume. Okay, we all learned that in science class, earth science, pretty much any science. What is the volume in milliliters of an object with a mass of 24 grams and a density of 3 grams per milliliter? Okay, so we can do this. The first thing before you actually write out the equation is I want you to make sure that your units are consistent. So in this case, we have milliliters, here we have grams, and here we have grams per milliliter. So everything works. Sometimes in these problems, you'll see that they'll use grams and liters and then talk about milliliters. So you'll have to do some sort of conversions. Just make sure that your units are consistent throughout the entire problem. So in our case, we don't have to worry since the units are already good to go. So, okay, so the density is, let's fill this in. The density is 3. The mass is 24. And we are looking for the volume. So we can see clearly here that 24 divided by something, all right, divided by the volume is equal to 3. So 24 divided by what is equal to 3? We know 8 is the answer, right? 24 divided by 8 is going to be equal to 3. You could also do this algebraically, but we won't get into that right now. We'll probably see something like this later. Don't you worry. Number 6. Last week, Raul worked 11 more hours than Angelica. If they worked a combined total of 59 hours, how many hours did Angelica work last week? Okay, 1 second. Okay. So in these types of problems, I usually like to set x as the lowest value. So whichever one of the people either worked the least amount of hours or had the least number of baseball cards, whatever that lowest value is, I usually set that for x, and it makes it easier, I think. So in this case, we're going to say x is equal to number of Angelica's, man, my handwriting is really bad today. We'll just say number of A's, which is Angelica's hours. Okay. And how do we compare Raul's hours to Angelica's hours? Well, we could say that x plus 11, right, because he worked 11 more hours than her, is equal to Raul's hours. Okay, so now we see that x is Angelica's hours, x plus 11 is Raul's hours. So combined, x plus 11, combined, they both worked 59 hours. So if that's the case, how can we solve this equation? Well, you can combine x plus x is 2x, plus 11 is 59. Okay, and now, I know we haven't done this in a while, but we want to do the opposite to both sides. So what is the opposite of adding 11? Subtracting 11 on both sides. This crosses out. And so we have 2x is equal to 48. And now what is the opposite of multiplying by 2? Dividing by 2 on both sides. So we're going to divide by 2. X is equal to 24. So what was the question? How many hours did Angelica work last week? Well, we see that her hours are represented by x, which is equal to 24. So A is the correct answer. Let me get a quick sip here. Okay. Okay, movies with the greatest ticket sales in 2012. All right, and we have a bunch of data here. Let's see the question. The table above represents the 50 movies that had the greatest ticket sales in 2012. Blah, 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 blah. What proportion of the movies are comedies with a PG-13 rating? Okay, so before you even find the comedies and the PG-13, the first thing that you want to look for is what is the total sample that they're asking us about. Okay, so what I mean by this is that when we find a proportion, when we find a probability, we're looking for the target, and the target is represented by, in this case, the comedies with a PG-13 rating. That's the target that we're looking for. But before we even look at the target, we want to find out what is the actual sample that we care about. Are we sampling just comedies? Are we sampling just PG-13 movies? Are we sampling all the movies? And so in this case, it says, what proportion of the movies? So this makes us think that they're sampling the entire movie list. And in this case, that entire list is 50 movies. Okay, so we know that our sample is going to be over 50. So now what is our target? Well, our target are comedies with a PG-13 rating. So how many comedies are there with a PG-13 rating? So the PG-13 ratings are here, and the comedies are here, and we see that the comedies with the PG-13 rating are there are only 4 of them. So we see that the target is 4, the entire sample is 50, so 4 out of 50 is our sample, and A is a simplified version of that. Okay, if we divide by 2, we get 2 out of 25. All right. Nice, 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 nice. Number 8. Line L in the XY plane contains points from each of the quadrants 2, 3, and 4, but no points from quadrant 1. So if I draw that right quick, we have quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, quadrant 4. Okay, this is something that you should know well, and if you don't know this well, please write this on an index card and add it to your collection, because this is something that you need memorized for this exam, and it's pretty easy. 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of goes counterclockwise. Okay, so we have a line that somehow goes through these 3 guys but avoids 1. So what do we know about this line? The slope of L is undefined. That is not true. An undefined line, by the way, an undefined slope is a vertical line like that. The slope of line L is 0. That's not true as well, because that would be a horizontal line. The slope of line L is positive. That's not true, because a positive line goes up like this. And D is the correct answer. It is a negative sloping line. And if you ever forget which is positive, which is negative, think of reading it like a book, right? So how would you read a book? You'd read it from left to right. And so in this case, from left to right, it goes down. So if it goes down from left to right like a book, then that is a negative slope. Little fun reminder. All right, number 9. Oh man, a lot of numbers. Registered voters, okay. This blah, 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 4, 5, 8, okay. Based on the table, if a registered voter who is 18 to 44 years old in 2012 is chosen at random, which of the following is the closest to the probability that the registered voter was from the Midwest region? So this is actually similar concept to what we did in that other problem. In that problem, what was it? Right about, heck, I can't go back to it. Right about here. Remember this? Target over sample? We just did it. Target, I'll write it again, largely and still with very bad handwriting. Target over sample. So what is our sample? Our sample is registered voter who is 18 to 44 years old. So that'll be the sum of 14,766 plus 47,896. Okay. And then what is our target? Our target is which of the following is closest to the probability that the registered voter was from the Midwest region? Okay. So the people from the Midwest region in this sample are these 2 values right here. 3, 4, 5, 3 plus 11, 2, 37. Right, and so how do you calculate a probability? It's the same way, you just divide these 2 values, the target divided by the sample. So let me go to my handy dandy calculator. Okay, and let's see if wait. Okay, let's not mess this up. So we have 3, 4, 5, 3 plus 11, 2, 37. So that's 14,690 over. Is there an easy way to clear this? Okay, fine. 14 plus 47,896. 62,662. Okay, and lastly, I just have to divide them. 14,690 divided by 62,662. 0.2344 is closest to 0.25. It's strangely kind of far away from it in a way, so I hope my math is correct. But I'm going to stick with it. I'm confident. I did as best as I could to my knowledge. So yeah, I hope it's B. Okay. Gestation period, or is it gestation? You know, I was a biology major in college, so I should probably know how to pronounce this. But I know what they mean. Versus life expectancy. A curator at a wildlife society created the scatter plot above to examine the relationship between the gestation period and life expectancy of 10 species of animals. English is tough for me sometimes. What is life expectancy in years of the animal that has the longest, I'm not even saying it, period. Okay. The life expectancy of the longest G period. Well, the longest one is right here. What is the life expectancy of that creature? It is right here, 3 years. That's pretty easy. Okay. Of the labeled points, which represents the animal for which the ratio of life expectancy to G period is greatest? So basically it's saying the ratio of the Y to the X. Okay, so you want to have a high life expectancy and a low gestation period. So, whoa, how did I do that? A seems actually pretty good, right? It's pretty high on the Y and pretty low on the X. B is only a little higher on the Y, but a lot higher on the X. So that ratio won't be better. C is even worse than B. And D, I'm going to have to still stick with A, right? A is pretty high on the expectancy part and lower on the G period. So A seems to be the correct answer here. Alrighty. 12. In the xy plane, the graph of the function f has x-intercepts at -3, -1, and 1. Which of the following could define f? Okay. So we know that something is an x-intercept if you plug in x, and that will result in 0 on the y. So what I mean by that is if I have something like that, okay, if you look right here, what the? Can't draw it on anymore? Yes, I can. If I click that, okay, right here. All right, let's say that this is 4. Oh, you guys remember the 4s? Okay. All right, if this is a x-intercept, and it is, then when I plug in this value into the equation, do you see how the y value has to be 0? Right, because that is 4, 0. So in our case, we should be able to plug in -3, -1, and 1, and in each case, we should be able to get 0 on the y. So in this case, in A, we see that if we plug in -3, -3 minus 3 will be -9, right? And none of these will equal to 0. So that does not work, right? We need something like +3, right? Because -3 plus 3 will get you to 0. Okay, so this one works. If you plug in 1 here, you get a 0. And if you plug in -1 here, you get a 0 as well. So C is the correct answer. In all 3 of those cases, you can plug them in and you'll get 0 for f of x. All right. In this case, it's tricky. It would seem that it might work for -3 and -1, but for +1, neither of these will equal to 0. So that is not the correct answer. Okay. Number 13. The population of mosquitoes in a swamp is estimated over a course of 20 weeks, as shown in the table. Which of the following best describes the relationship between the time and estimated population of mosquitoes during the 20 weeks? Well, we see the time goes up pretty linearly, right? +5, +5, +5, +5. But these things, the actual population is multiplying by 10. It's going up a power of 10 every single time. So it's times 10, times 10, times 10. So that is not a linear growth. That is much, much faster. And we see that this is an exponential growth. They are growing exponentially every 5 years.
5 weeks.
But 5 years as well, I would imagine. Okay. 14. The expression above gives the amount of money in dollars generated in a year by a $1,000 deposit in a bank account that pays an annual interest of R%, compounded monthly. Okay, we've seen these before. Pretty simple interest problem. Which of the following expressions shows how much additional money is generated at an interest of 5%, then at an interest of 3%? So right away, I see that it's saying an additional, which means it's probably some sort of difference between them, right? And so I see we have a difference here, which is good. Here, we're dividing, right? So that's not going to show us how much additional money it's earning. Same thing here. We're dividing. Here, we're subtracting. So this is good. So it's one of these two. I know that. So the question is, do we want to do the subtraction inside of the parentheses? Or do we want to figure out the entire equation for 5% and then figure out for 3% and subtract? So it seems to be that D is the correct answer, because only using the calculation in D do we see what the difference would be after 12, after a year, okay? So in this case, we would only see what the compound is. Actually, this wouldn't even tell us anything, to be honest. D shows, okay, this is how much money will be earned after 12 months for 5%. This is how much will be earned for 3%, and then we'll find out the difference. Okay, let me just fix something on my PC right quick. Bob Gills, great question. Do I teach physics? So to answer that question, I will say I teach it reluctantly. Of the three main sciences, biology, chemistry, and physics, that's probably my weakest in terms of teaching. So I more readily, again, I was a molecular bio major, so I studied a lot of chemistry and biology, not as much physics. But that's could be something if there's enough interest. Maybe I'll pull out a few lessons here and there. But tell me if you're interested in anything in technology. Like, are you looking to create websites? Have you created websites before? Are you looking to create apps of some sort? Let me know what you have in mind in that regard. Or are there some videos that you've looked for online that you haven't been able to see or not explained well? Something like that. For now, we'll move on to number 15. Which of the following scatter plots shows a relationship that is appropriately modeled with the equation y equals ax to the b, where a is positive and b is negative? So this is actually a perfect example of plugging a situation where you can and probably should plug in your own numbers, because it's kind of weird just looking at it abstractly, like, okay, a to the x to the b. You know, what if we just put in a value for a that is positive? So let's say a could be equal to 2, and b is negative, and so let's say b is equal to -2. And let me rewrite that equation. So 2x to the -2. Okay, and how do we rewrite x to the -2? Well, x to the -2 is also known as 1 over x squared. Okay, and so we will multiply 2 times 1 over x squared, or 2 over x squared. So now that we know, okay, 2 over x squared, which of these will look like something that can be modeled by this? So let's see. Well, if x is 1, then 2 divided by 1 squared will be equal to 2. Okay, let's plug in like something, I don't know, let's say 4. 4, what's 2 divided by 4 squared? So 2 over 16 is 1/8. Okay, so I can see a pattern emerging here. Let me plug in 8 here. 2 divided by 8 squared. So 2 over 64 is 1 over 32. Okay, so now I could see, aha. So it starts out 1, 2. So it starts out pretty high, and then slowly it gets lower, or I mean, it quickly gets to 1/8, but then from then on, it kind of slowly gets smaller and smaller and smaller as x gets bigger. So that most closely looks to be B, right? It starts out pretty high, then it goes down quick, and then all of a sudden slows down to little fractional changes. Bob Gills, I am an AP Computer Science. Oh, that's pretty cool. AP Comp Sci. So I think, is the test now mostly Java? Is that what the syllabus is all about, Java? If so, you might be interested maybe in more web languages, such as JavaScript, or maybe something like Swift for iOS. That's something I'm actually trying to learn myself at the moment. Okay. Let's see. Question 16-17. Mr. Martinson is building a concrete patio in his backyard and deciding where to buy the materials and rent the tools needed for the project. The table below shows the materials costs and daily rental costs for 3 different stores. Gotcha. The total cost, Y, for buying the material and renting the tools in terms of the number of days, X, is given by Y equals M plus W plus K, okay, times X. That makes sense. Because you want to add up these two and multiply by the number of days, right? Because these are the daily costs. For what number of days, X, will the total cost of buying the materials and renting the tools from store B be less than or equal to the total cost of buying the materials and renting the tools from store A? Okay, so I like this question actually. So let's see. For store B, if we use this equation, we can see that it's going to be equal to 600. Y equals 600 plus W plus K. So that's going to be 25 plus 80 times X. Okay, so that's store B. Store A is 750 plus 15 plus 65 times X. So we want to see in which case will this guy be less than or equal to this guy down here. So let's do that. 600 plus 25 plus 80 is 105. In which case will this be less than or equal to 750 plus, what's 15 plus 65 is 80? X. Okay, so now let's solve for X. To do that, we want to have all of the X's on one side and all of the numbers on the other side. So in our case, we want to get the X's to the left side. So I'm going to subtract 80X, subtract 80X, and this cancels out. So that's going to be 25X is less than or equal to, and I'm going to subtract 600 on both sides. Okay, and so now I get rid of the number on the left side, and so equal 150, right? 750 minus 600 is 150. So now to isolate X, I will do the opposite to both sides. Okay, and now X is less than or equal to, and what is 150 divided by 25? That is equal to 6. Okay, so A, X is less than or equal to 6. 17. And the relationship between the total cost Y of building materials and renting the tools at store C and the number of days X for which the tools are rented is graphed in the XY plane. What does the slope of the line represent? So if we look at this equation here, what is the slope of the line? Well, if we rewrite this in Y equals mx plus b form, we see that m in this case, which is the value next to x, is equal to w plus k. So w plus k is the total cost of renting those these two pieces of equipment per day. All right, so that's going to be the total daily rental cost of the tools. Bam, D. Okay, do you see how I did that? All I did was I related M, which is the slope, right, in a regular equation for a line, to this equation that they gave us here. And so M is basically equating to W plus K. Okay. All right, 18. Jim has identical drinking glasses, each in the shape of a right circular cylinder with internal diameter of 3 inches. He pours milk from a gallon jug into each glass until it is full. If the height of the milk in each glass is about 6 inches, what is the largest number of full milk glasses that he can pour from 1 gallon of milk? There are 231 cubic inches in 1 gallon. Okay, so essentially we're going to find out what the volume of a gallon is, which they tell us, okay, is 231. And we want to divide by the volume of one of his cups or drinking glasses, whatever you want to call them, right? Because if we know the volume of a gallon and we divide it by the volume of each of the cups, we'll see how many cups can go into it. So in our case, the volume of a gallon is 231. They told us that right there. So we want to divide that by the volume of one of his drinking glasses. So what is the volume of one of his drinking glasses? So the volume of a cylinder, okay, is equal to pi r squared h. And that is given to you in the very beginning of this test. Right here. Okay, so you actually do not have to memorize that. They give you a bunch of formulas at the beginning. And I will let you know as we go along what things you have to memorize and what things you can kind of refer back to. What I mentioned earlier that you should memorize. Oh yeah, the quadrants. Definitely memorize that. Where was I? Okay, here we go. So the volume of a cylinder. So in our case, pi times the radius of one of his glasses. So it has a diameter of 3 inches. So if that's the case, then the radius will be 1.5. So pi r squared times h, and the height of his glass is 6 inches. Okay, so now we just have to put that in right here. Squared times 6. Simple enough. So let's do it. Let's get our calculator. So we have 1.5 times 1.5. This is definitely not a scientific calculator. Times 6. Times, I'll just put 3.14, but if you have a graphing calculator, which I hope you do, because that'll be easier for the test, then you can actually just press the pi button there to get a more accurate answer. So in our case, it's 42.39. 42.39. So that's equal to 42.39. And so now, let me just do 231 divided by 42.39, which is 5.45. So you can pour in 5 full glasses and then basically like a half of another one. So they ask us, what is the largest number of full milk glasses? So that's 5 full milk glasses. 19. If 3p minus 2 is greater than or equal to 1, what is the least possible value of 3p plus 2? So you can do this a few different ways. You can maybe solve just for p, but in our case, let's do it in a fun way. So this is the equation they gave us. Let's make 3p minus 2 be somehow 3p plus 2. So how do we do that? Well, we can add 4 to both sides. Okay, and if we do that, we see that 3p, what's minus 2 plus 2? That's equal to, minus 2 plus 4 is equal to positive 2. And 1 plus 4 is equal to 5. Okay, and remember, this is a perfectly legitimate strategy. As long as you're doing the same thing to both sides, it does not change the equation or the inequality at all. Okay, so I am totally allowed by the algebra gods to add 4 to both sides. And so in this case, we know that the least possible value is 5. Number 20. 10 questions left. Let's do it. The mass of living organisms in a lake is defined as to be the biomass of the lake. Okay. The biomass in the lake doubles each year. Which of the following graphs could model the biomass? All right, so that's pretty easy, right? We know that if it doubles every year, that is an exponential growth, right? Because every year increases +1, +1, +1. But if it's multiplied by 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, then that is going to be exponential. So C, which is kind of a curvy looking graph there, shows an exponential growth. 21. Okay. The bar graph above shows renewable energy consumption in quadrillions. It's a big number. Quadrillions of BTU in the United States. Hey, what'd I do? Okay. In the scatter plot of the data, where renewable energy consumption in the year 2000 is plotted along the x-axis, and 2010 is y-axis. For each of the given sources, how many data points would be above the line y equals x? Ooh, I like this one. So if we have a graph, okay, this is a graph. This is x and this is y. What does y equals x look like? Let me get my handy dandy line tool here. Well, y equals x would be a line with a slope of 1. Just be kind of like a perfectly diagonal 45-degree line. So how could you get data points such that they're kind of above, right? They're like over here. They're above this line. Well, the only way you can do that is if your y is greater than x, right? Because like, let's say here, this is 2, right? This right here is going to be 2, 2, right? And this would be like, right here would be like, sorry. That would be, right here would be something like 4, 4, right? So here, the only way you can have something here would be if it's something like 4, 6, right? So y has to be bigger than x in order for it to be above the line. So in which of these cases is y greater than x? Well, they told us that 2010 is y and 2000 is x, right? Is that true? Yeah. So in how many cases are y greater than x? Well, here, yes. Here, yes. Here, no. Here, yes. And here, no. Okay, so in 3 of these cases, y is greater than x. Not bad. Of the following, which best approximates the percent decrease in consumption of wood power from 2000 to 2010? Okay, so wood, in 2000, it was at 2, it was between 2 and 2.5. So this is going to be 2.25, and here is going to be exactly at 2. So it went down from 2.25 to 2. So how do we find out the percent decrease? So if you remember in past lessons, I talked about, oh yeah, I know you have to divide by something and then divide by something, but do I divide by the bigger number, the smaller number? Forget all that. It's as simple as find the difference, okay, and divide by the original. Whatever the original figure was, in our case, the original was 2.25, and we went down to 2. So what you're going to do is 2.25 minus 2 divided by 2.25. That was the original value. And so 2.25 minus 2 is equal to 0.25 over 2.25. So let's see. 0.25, what the? 0.25 divided by 2.25 is 0.111111. That is equal to P. 0.111 multiply by 2 decimal places, and we get 11%. You get what I mean. Okay, 23. The tables below give the distribution of high temperatures in degrees Fahrenheit. Wait, my screen's going flux mode. I got to disable before my computer freaks out. Wait a minute. Sorry, guys. Brief technical pause. And I'm back. Okay. Table below gives the distribution. Okay, gotcha. Same 21 days. Which of the following is true about the data shown for the 21 days? And these are all questions about standard deviation. So what is standard deviation? Without actually defining the formula for standard deviation, an easy way to think about it, and it should basically apply for, I would say, 90% of all SAT questions about it, is how much on average do the values deviate from the mean, okay? From the mean value. So if, let's say, for example, you had a class that had an average test score of 70%, okay, you had a 70% test average. If all the students had, about like a 65, 68, 70, 72, 74, your standard deviation would be pretty small, right? Because they're all kind of close, clumped up to the mean. But if for some reason you had, let's say, a bunch of kids get 100 and a bunch of other kids get like a 25, your standard deviation would be huge because for some reason they're kind of not bunched up together in the mean. They're all really far apart from the mean. So in our case, which has a greater standard deviation? So we see here that, let's say in city A, the mean, I see most of it is about 79. So the mean will be somewhere like in this range or like around 79. Okay, so it makes sense that these are all kind of clumped around 79. In this case, what is the mean? Well, they're all kind of balanced out, so the mean would probably be somewhere in the center here, around 78. But as you see here, the frequency is really high at the edges, right? 76 has a high frequency, 80 has a high frequency, so the standard deviation will probably be higher at the ends, or because of the ends, okay? So in this case, the standard deviation of temperatures in city B appears to be larger. Okay, 24. In the circle above, segment AB is a diameter. If the length of arc ADB is 8 pi, what is the length of the radius of the circle? Okay, so this entire arc is 8 pi. How are we going to find out what the radius of the circle is? Well, it's pretty easy actually, because since this is a perfect half, then we know the other half is going to be 8 pi as well, which means that the circumference is going to be equal to 8 pi plus 8 pi, which is 16 pi. And so if we know what the circumference is, we could always find out what the radius is, because the circumference is equal to 2 pi r. So 2 pi r is equal to the circumference, which is equal to 16 pi. And so if that's the case, how are we going to solve for r? Well, we can divide both sides by pi. And so this cancels out and this cancels out. And so we get 2r is equal to 16. And if 2r is equal to 16, then r must be equal to 8. Very nice. 25. Okay. The polynomials f of x and g of x are defined above. Which of the following polynomials is divisible by 2x plus 3? So I actually think that this is probably the trickiest problem on this entire test. I skimmed through it pretty quickly, and I think this is probably going to throw off the most students. So let's see here. The very first thing that you want to see, okay, is that for f of x, each of these share a common factor, which is 2. So for f of x, you could actually factor out 2 right away. And so that'll get you x cubed plus 3x squared plus 2x. And then, actually, wait a minute, you can factor out 2x. Sorry, so each of these not only share 2, but they also share 2x. So 2x. So if we factor that out, we get x squared plus 3x plus 2. So if you realize that and you factor this out, then the follow-up realization is that g of x is actually equal to exactly what's in this parentheses. Do you see that right there? That g of x is equal to x squared plus 3x plus 2. So we can rewrite this yet again as 2x times g of x. Do you see that? 2 of x times g of x, right? All I did was I substituted this right here for this right here. Okay, so if that's the case, which of these will be equal, which of these will be divisible by 2x plus 3? So if you plug in 2x times g of x and replace it for f of x, I'll show you what it is for a. So for an a, h of x is equal to 2x gx plus gx. Okay, and if we factor out g of x from each of these, okay, if we factor out g of x, what's remaining is 2x plus 1, because we divided g of x here and we got 2x left, and we divided g of x divided by g of x and we got 1. Okay, so we see that 2x plus 1 is not divisible by 2x plus 3. But for p of x, if we do the same thing, if we replace f of x with this right here, we see we get 2x g of x plus 3 times g of x. And now if we factor out g of x, we get what's remaining, 2x plus 3, okay? Because we divided g of x from each of these, and this is what remains. And so we see that in B, 2x plus 3 is also a factor of 2x plus 3, right? That makes sense that these two are divisible. So this is kind of a tricky one. I'm not going to lie. This is, in my opinion, the trickiest problem of this section 4. But if you are confident in your algebra skills, if you know how to factor well, and if you pick up on these patterns, right, if you notice that, aha, wait a minute, that this whole thing times 2x is equal to this, all right, you should be trying to look for these patterns, then you would have been in a step in the right direction for solving this. Okay, so don't worry, this is a little bit too complicated. Just skip it on the real test and go back to it later. Don't waste your time for a problem that's pretty difficult for you. So 26. Let x and y be numbers such that negative y is less than x is less than y. Which of the following must be true? Okay, so let us maybe plug in some values, and we'll try to, this is actually pretty fun because, you know, you kind of want to look for counter examples, counter arguments to kind of prove these false. That's kind of the quickest way to do it. So let's just pick a value that would work. So let's set x equals to 0, y will be 1, and negative y will be negative 1. So that works. So which of the following must be true? The absolute value of x is less than y. Okay. So in our example, it is. But what if you had, like, I don't know, let's say x is 3. Let's say x is 3, y is 2. No, that would not work. So I think x has to be less than y. Or sorry, the absolute value of it has to be less than y. X is greater than 0. Which of the following must be true? Well, wait a minute. That's not true, right? We just said x is equal to 0. So that's actually incorrect. So we can knock off that one and knock off that one. Okay, so 3. Y is greater than 0. Is that true? Or does that have to be true? So let's see. Let's make x equal -1. And y will be 3. So -1 is... Wait, sorry, sorry. Okay. Is my marker working? What the heck? Why did it stop working? Okay. Sorry. Okay, so -1 is less than 3, and it's also greater than -3. So y... Wait a minute. Sorry. I should have made... Okay. Ignore what I just did here. So we need to make y not greater than 0. So let's make y -2 and +2. Is there something that is less than 2 but greater than 2? I guess not, right? -3 less than y. So I guess y does have to be greater than 0. No, but I'm thinking that there is a case here, and I'm kind of not seeing it right now. Let's think for one more second here. Does y have to be... Yeah, I guess it does. Okay. So I think y does have to be greater than 0 for this to work, because nothing is going to be less than a negative and bigger than a positive. So C is the correct answer. All right, so, take your time on those, because they're usually pretty easy. You just don't want to make any stupid mistakes for that. Okay. The relative housing cost for a U.S. city is defined to be the ratio average housing cost divided by national average housing cost. Okay. Gotcha. Scatter plot. Okay. Line of best fit shows the equation here. Which of the following best explains how the number 61, so this number 61 right here, in the equation relates to the scatter plot. So we know that 61 is kind of our y-intercept, and the y refers to the relative housing cost as a percent of national average cost. So it's a percent. So it's going to be 61%. So I see that here, $61. That doesn't make sense. It has to be percent. In 2005, the lowest housing cost in the United States was about 61% of the highest housing cost. No, because this is a percent of the national average, not a percent of the highest housing cost. So B's out. 2005, even in cities with low population densities, housing costs were never below 61% of the national average. So I want you to be very careful with words like never or always, because usually those are not the right answers. Okay? There could be a house that's, I don't know, 10% of the national average. We don't know that any house is, never below this number. So so C is not the correct answer. D, even in cities with low population densities, housing costs were likely at least. That is the correct answer, right? Because low population, it's saying that on average, they're going to be at least 61%. All right, last 3 problems. Let's do it. 28. Which of the following is an equivalent form of the function f in which the minimum value of f appears as a constant or coefficient? So problems like this have popped up before. Basically, they're asking, first of all, which of these solutions are in a form that show you the vertex, right? Because the vertex will have the minimum or the maximum value. So this should be, the answer should be in vertex form. So actually right off the bat, A and B are knocked off because they are not in vertex form. And if you're not sure what vertex form is, please Google that, because that is something that you will need to know for this exam. So that's another thing to add to your index cards. Look up the standard form of quadratic equations and also the vertex form of quadratic equations. That's going to be very important for the SATs. So which of these is equivalent to this right here? So it should be pretty easy to figure out which of these is equivalent. So let us FOIL x minus 1 times x minus 1. That's going to be equal to x squared minus x plus 1. And then minus 21 at the end there. And so if we combine like terms, we see that we have minus 2x plus 1 minus 21 is minus 20. Okay, and here if we FOIL these, we get x squared plus 6x minus 4x minus 24. And so combining like terms, we get x squared plus 2x minus 24. So this is actually not equivalent to this. And D, I am very confident, and I know this, that D will be equivalent. If you FOIL this and subtract by 25, you'll get this exact same equation. Don't believe me? Try it yourself. 29. If x is the average of m and 9, y is the average of 2m and 15, and z is the average of 3m and 18, what is the average of x, y, and z in terms of m? Whoa. All right, I think the algebra might get real here. Okay, so let's see. Let's write these out. X is the average of m and 9. So that means that x is equal to m plus 9 divided by 2. Okay. So actually, before I even move on, let's just maybe multiply both sides by 2. Let's multiply both sides by 2 to get rid of this denominator. So 2x is equal to m plus 9. Okay? So that's our first equation. Y is the average of 2m plus 15. So if I divide that by 2, okay? So we can do the same thing that we did with the x's. We'll multiply both sides by 2. And so we'll get 2y is equal to 2m plus 15. And then z is equal to 3m plus 18 over 2. Okay, so how do we find out the average of x, y, and z? So actually, maybe this step wasn't the correct one. What I mean is multiplying both sides by 2. So what they want us to figure out is x plus y plus z divided by 3, right? That would be the average of x, y, and z. We have 3 numbers and we're finding the average of them, so we want to add them all up and divide it by 3. So if we want to relate this back to m, all we have to do is replace each of these with however many m's it equals, right? So x, for example, is equal to m plus 9 over 2. Y is equal to 2m plus 15 over 2. And z is equal to 3m plus 18 over 2. Okay? And so if that's the case, 1 second, let me get some more light here. Or is that too much light? That seems okay. So now all of this is being divided, even u even u. That's going to be, that's a 2 right there. That's a 2. All that is being divided by 3. So yeah, so let's combine everything. Let's combine the numerator. So they all actually share a denominator of 2. So I can just combine them into one large fraction up top. So m plus 9 plus 2m plus 15 plus 3m plus 18. So let's combine all the m's. m plus 2m plus 3m is 6m plus 9 plus 15 plus 18. So 9 plus 15 is 24, plus 18 is 42 over 2, all over 3. Okay, so far so good. And what is 6m plus 42 divided by 2 divided by 3? So if we're dividing by 2 and then dividing by 3, that's basically like saying 6m plus 42 divided by 6. Okay, that is equivalent. And so now which of these 4 equals 6m plus 42 divided by 6? Well, what you can do is, since both of these are dividing by 6, you can divide them individually. So 6m divided by 6 is equal to m, and 42 divided by 6 is equal to 7. So m plus 7 is the correct answer. Woo! That was some pretty nice algebra. Actually not algebra, more like arithmetic, I would say. So as long as you're comfortable with adding fractions, dividing fractions, combining fractions and variables, that one should not have been too terrible. Last problem in the multiple choice section, and the last problem for today. The function, this guy right here, which is represented by this squiggly, is graphed over there. If k is a constant, such that the equation f of x equals k has 3 real solutions, which of the following could be the value of k? So we have some sort of line f of x equal to k. So let's say, for example, that f of x is equal to 2. And so if k is equal to 2, what would that line look like? So f of x is also known as y. So for graphs, anytime they say f of x, you could just replace that with y. So what does y equal to 2 look like? Well, y equals to 2 is just a horizontal line that goes through 2, like that. Okay? So if that was the case, how many real solutions would these two equations have? We only see one real solution right there, right? If y was 0, it'd also have only one real solution. So in which case would they have 3 real solutions? It would have to go through this line exactly 3 times. So if I draw y through right here, we see that it goes through 1, 2, 3 times. So in this case, there are 3 real solutions, right? K is equal to this graph here. All right, so we're ignoring these. Just worry about these 3 solutions. So k, if k is equal to -3, that means it's a horizontal line that goes through this squiggly 3 times, aka there are 3 solutions for that graph. So that about sums it up for practice test 4, section number 4, the calculator portion, and the multiple choice portion of that calculator portion. As I mentioned in the beginning of this stream, on Thursday I'll be finishing up this section, and I think I will be concluding the SAT streams for a little while. I want to try out something else. I'm kind of thinking I might want to introduce streams where I'm learning something myself, so maybe something that I just learned, and somehow translating that into an educational stream for you guys. Because I think sometimes people who have just learned the material can explain things a little bit better than people who are experts in the topic. right? It's strange to say that, but imagine if you're like the world's expert on, I don't know, iOS development. You're like a super Apple software engineer. Do you think you'll be able to explain to like a 13 or 14-year-old how to begin coding? You know, it's like so far behind you and so far gone that you're just kind of thinking on too high of a level to bring it down to somebody who's a brand new learner. But if you're just learning something and you can kind of explain things well, which I sometimes can, then I think sometimes you can be better equipped to teach something new. So I think I'm going to be trying that. As I learn stuff, I might create streams and tutorials to help you guys. And the first topic that I will be probably jumping into is somewhere in the world of web development. So maybe it's creating a WordPress site, which I've done a few times. Could be some sort of iOS development. Could be maybe Android development. I want to hear from you guys, though. If you're interested in some sort of topic in the educational technology world, just let me know, and maybe I'll whip up a cool tutorial for you, and hopefully I'll stream it, because I'm actually really interested in streaming and getting live viewers talking and communicating. So yeah, so let me know. Feel free to write in the comments if you're watching this after the fact, and I will be glad to make more streams for you. So at the moment, I'm at 18 out of 20 subs. So it was originally a monthly goal. Now it's a summer goal. I'm going to rephrase that. So the summer goal is 20 subs. There's about, how many days left in August? There's 9 days left. So sub, and I will be doing surprise sub sessions sometime in the next month or so. So I hopefully will see you then. Good luck with your SATs, and hit me up, subscribe.